really want to make fun of you, but you kind of pull it off, and it just angers me more than anything. So I started wearing them, and then I got known at Disney as the BowTieSecurityGuy because like they couldn't remember my name, but they go, "Hey, you're that BowTieSecurity guy." The biggest and most common threat to your organization is going to be social engineering, plain and simple. All of your major breaches, for the most part, year after year after year, comes because all of your protection, all of your defense in depth means nothing if somebody internal lets the attacker in.
Welcome to the VPNRanks podcast. Today we are excited to welcome Robert Whetstine. Robert is a seasoned cybersecurity leader with over 20 years of experience at major companies like Disney, Fox, and Global Payments. Known for his creative problem-solving and innovative approach to building security programs, he is also a passionate mentor, helping the next generation of cybersecurity professionals find their footing. So welcome, Robert. It's an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm excited. This is fun. I always enjoy these. And it's always weird to hear, all my accomplishments kind of laid out. It's very odd.
First question is, looking back, what initially inspired you to the cybersecurity field? Was there a particular moment or experience that sparked your passion towards it?
Yeah, ironically, it was the 1990s movie Hackers that really inspired me to get into cybersecurity. I saw that movie and I saw some of the cool things that they did. I only learned out later that they would be very difficult to execute in real life, but that movie kind of inspired that curiosity. I'd always been a bit of a tinkerer, and I didn't have a lot of money for computers, so I normally would just play at friends' houses on their computers. But once I saw that film, I was determined to find a computer or a laptop to start learning more.
I've seen that you are a massive fan of gaming, TV, and movies, right? So, have you ever drawn parallels between pop culture and cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of parallels with that. The show that I think really did it best was Mr. Robot, because they actually had true hacking. They used real life events. They used real life breaches, and they also had a very good, I can't remember the person's name, hacking consultant that made sure that it was as real as possible. Watching that with friends and people are like, "That's what you do?" Yes, that is what I do. It's very boring to watch. It's not banging on a keyboard for a minute and then going, "I'm in." That doesn't really happen.
As you know that cybersecurity is full of unexpected challenges, right? So can you share a time when you had to think outside of the box to solve a critical security issue and what that taught you about innovation under pressure?
Yeah, there was one time where we had an outage that was affecting the entire West Coast's VPN remote access to Disney. And I couldn't figure it out because all of my load balancers, all of my router, all the firewalls, all the logging was getting overloaded within seconds. We spent probably a good 30 hours trying to figure it out, and we worked with our vendors and all this stuff, and nobody could come up with a conclusion. So what we did is we shut down each area one by one to identify who was that top talker. Then when we found out was a system had created a loop back between their VPN connection, their Cisco phone, and then they reconnected it right back to the VPN connection. So it created this loop back scenario, and just this perfect storm. We called the lady and I said, "Can you please unplug that?" And as soon as they did, service was restored. But it was one of those things where you don't really know until you start to dig in. A lot of times, the most important thing for a cybersecurity professional is to prove that it's not a hacker, right? So we're not looking to prove that it's a hacker, because 99.9% of the time it's not. It's a configuration issue. It's something else that's very simple to explain. So that was a tough one. We had everyone on board trying to figure that one out.
Now that you mention it, this reminds me of that latest CrowdStrike incident that happened. that also one
Yeah,
of those things.
that is one of those interesting ones, right? That you just
So
never expect to see.
what are your thoughts about that incident? And how
I
do the
found it
companies?
interesting. Well, I talked to some different friends at other companies, and it was interesting to kind of hear that because of the way the update was deployed, it caused a lot of issues. I mean, it wasn't something you could avoid, even if you were set in your system to say, "Hey, I don't want to apply the latest patch. I want to apply N-1." It still pushed those to systems. So it was very fascinating to me. I didn't dig in too much for it. I wasn't really affected by it, but it was very interesting to see how crippled we became very, very quickly. And I still am and was a huge fan of CrowdStrike because of they're one of the better EDRs out there.
You're known for your eagerness to mentor others in cybersecurity, right? So, what key advice do you give to newcomers in the field, especially those who really want to make a significant impact?
Yeah, the biggest and most important thing is that it's gonna take time. Understand that it's not gonna be like all of the things that the news and radio told you about the millions of jobs going unfulfilled in cyber. Those are not for entry level. Entry level roles are incredibly difficult. 1,700 applications per entry level role. And how do you stand out? The reality is they're going to probably hire their friend. They're probably going to hire their friend of a friend, or someone their team knows, or an intern that's already inside the company. So interning, not for free, a paid internship has a lot of value. If you can't find a job, find a friend who has a company and have him put you on payroll or her put you on payroll and do patching or vulnerability management and help them out and make a little bit of cash on the side. That way you start gaining experience while you're looking for a job. And then the final thing is get engaged with the community. Go to your local B-Sides events. Join your local ISC Squared chapter. Do the certificates and all the stuff isn't going to get you a job. Networking is what gets you a job. Now more than ever, it's about who you know and less about what you know. There are still certain pockets for people who are upper echelon, genius level cybersecurity people that your big organizations, your Fortune 500s will chase after, but that's very rare. So just know it's going to take 2 to 4 years. Be patient. Try to find an IT job or something security adjacent, and then make the move.
That's some incredible advice. But what about those that are very eager to make an impact soon after entering the industry?
There's all kinds of great tools that you can use too for practice, like Hack in the Box and other things that you can utilize to kind of grow your skills. But I'll tell you, for an entry-level gig, it's all about that person taking a chance on you and that person wanting to help you grow. And the only way that really happens is with a personal relationship. Even if it's something like on LinkedIn, where you're just messaging people. Like for me, when I became unemployed, I messaged people with a video message that said, hey, here's a little bit about me. You can even still see that featured video on my page. And it really allowed people to connect with me without ever really talking to me. And that's where I think my mentees have had the most success. I've been able to help many entry-level people get into cyber jobs, but it's because they actively chased it every single day.
So you have to be very patient about it, right?
It's all about the mental game, right? You've got to keep your mental game fresh, and you've got to be ready for that interview and that opportunity when it arises, because you never know when it will arise.
Being a veteran with over 20 years in this industry, what emerging threats or technologies do you believe will shape the future of cybersecurity? And how should organizations prepare for those trends?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, everyone's scared of AI. I'm not. The biggest and most common threat to your organization is going to be social engineering. plain and simple. All of your major breaches, for the most part, year after year after year, comes because all of your protection, all of your defense in depth means nothing if somebody internal lets the attacker in. So I'm not scared of AI. AI is not going to make things easier. It's not going to make things harder. It's not very hard to hack as it is now. We write modules. Attackers can use things like Metasploit and things. As long as you're patching your systems and ensuring that they are patched and up to date on your perimeter, ensuring that all criticals and highs are closed, you have a very good security awareness program, and you are constantly testing your users and internal users with social engineering attacks, the odds are much, much lower just because of those two things, because that's the most common thing that happens. They take advantage of an exploit. Sometimes they'll take advantage of a 0-day. Those are the ones that make the news, but that's not the most common breach method. Even if you look at some of the OWASP top 10 stuff, it's all about, credentials and the clear and just basic stuff where you're like, really? What, why didn't somebody do this? So work on the core foundations of security, making sure that your perimeter is protected, ensuring that your development pipeline is secured and protected, and then also patching, updating, and doing security awareness training for your users. That's the most that, honestly, I feel that you need to do in most cases to protect your organization. So I'm not concerned about emerging threats, because it's just a different flavor of what's already there. Can attackers write malware and other things faster utilizing certain AI platforms? Of course they can. But that's not going to make them any more or less dangerous, because they still have to get a foothold. They still have to pass your EDR. They have to beat your antivirus. They have to beat your threat protection. They have to beat your WAS, your firewall. That's not easy to do, but it normally comes because of user mistake that allows an attacker in. Look at the latest Disney breach with Slack. The attacker, posted online that they were able to get that person to click on something malicious or gain access maliciously. So it's all about social engineering. It becomes the most common thing, in my opinion. And that's why I fought really hard to build that program at Disney, because I believe that was the biggest threat.
Now that we are talking about AI, how do you see AI involving in areas like threat protection and response?
I see it doing pretty well with threat protection. With response, it could be good, right? The biggest thing is, in order to trust a system to be completely automated, you need a lot of evidence to say, yep, it's going to do exactly what it needs to do. For me, AI is a massively awesome tool. It's great for when you're trying to hit a roadblock, or when you're trying to write something and you've hit a roadblock. And it's also just fantastic to, think outside the box. If you're trying to code something, maybe you go, hey, how can I code this a little better? And you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But it still requires a fundamental understanding. Where I'm slightly concerned about AI is it's going to replace the need for people to think. Very much like the Google search has, right?
Yes.
It's like, oh, the AI told me this. And we've seen this. We've seen multiple cases where lawyers have put things up in New York where, other areas have written policy and things with an AI without actually going through and validating it. And that's where I think the concern comes in. But to me, AI is, I tell all of my mentees, learn it, understand how to prompt it, understand how to use it. Before every single interview, type in, interviewing cybersecurity SOC job questions. And it'll give you the majority of the questions, and most of them will be what's asked. I've had multiple people message me going, hey, that AI chat GPT trick you taught me, they asked me all of the questions. There's a reason for that. Most people who interview don't know how to interview. So they will do the exact same thing, and they will be like, what questions should I ask? So having that in your back pocket and being able to do that is really good. But just understanding AI, how it's worked, and large language models in general is really important.
You can easily detect who is using the AI or not, right? So your name is written in a font that only bots can write. That I got to know. So what inspired this creative idea? I really want to know this.
Yeah, so once I got a job, I no longer cared who was talking to me and whether, like, if I wanted to only make real connections, I wanted to only connect to actual humans and not bots. I tested a few of the bots and I realized they couldn't handle non-default font. LinkedIn allows you to use probably 80 to 90 different fonts, but you have to know how to kind of input them by copying and pasting each character into the name field. But once you do this, you get a lot of funny things because how the bot handles my name is very unique. I'll get R, I'll get Albert, and I'll get portions of the first name, or it'll be written perfectly how it is on mine, which will tell me 100% that it wasn't written by a human, because who's going to copy and paste my name, then write their message? That's just not going to happen. So one of my favorite pastimes is messing with people who are utilizing bots. And luckily,
You're
a lot
not
of
in
people
really
have
a
good
favor of
jokes.
people using the bots, right?
I'm not against it. I understand the reason for it. I definitely tried it when I was unemployed, but I felt that personal touch was more important. And I talked to a marketing guy recently who sent me a message, and I called him out on his bot. I said, "Great looking bot. Maybe you need to fix the font issue." And he said, "Hey, look, game recognizes game. Do you have any recommendations?" And I said, "Start with the soft approach, man. Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for being part of the network. I'd love to get to know you more. Don't instantly hit me with a sales pitch." He messaged me later. He's like, "Can I buy you a drink? I got 30% more responses this week than I had in the previous months just because I reached out to people trying to start a combo." I said, "Sure, man. I'm happy to do that. Here's a link to my favorite root beer on Amazon." But it's really interesting because people are trying to remove that human touch in every possible way. And I think right now, more than ever within cyber and within technology, that personal relationship and that human touch, so to speak, is what's going to find you jobs.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. Like for me, it was all about creating what I call brand advocates. People who are actively looking out for me and wanting me to get employed. And that is exactly what I did. I talked about it on my page and I shared a video. I said, "Look, I'll tell you my hack on how every job that I applied for, I got an interview for, because I didn't apply for a job that I didn't have a connection. Plain and simple. If I didn't know someone or have somebody send me the job or somebody message me and say, 'Hey, check this job out,' I wouldn't apply for it, because the odds of being seen in that sea of AI resumes and the sea of all that stuff is very, very difficult. And I wasn't going to play the game. So I decided to just do my own thing. And thankfully it worked out.
May I ask what's this hashtag is about? Like, if I can see, you're using
BowTieSecurityGuy.
Yeah.
So,
is there a deeper meaning behind this?
Yeah, there is. So there's an event at Disney called Dapper Day where everybody goes and dresses up really fancy and goes to the theme parks. And this is many, many years ago. My wife made me a bow tie, and my family, we all went dressed super fancy. And I was like, I kind of like how I look in a bow tie. So I started wearing them to work. And when you're in technology, everybody kind of jokes with each other, and especially the males were a little more aggressive to mock each other. So I assumed I was going to be very heavily mocked. And when I walked in, my buddy goes, "I really want to make fun of you, but you kind of pull it off, and it just angers me more than anything." So I started wearing them. And then I got known at Disney as the BowTieSecurityGuy, because like they couldn't remember my name, but they go, "Hey, you're that BowTieSecurityGuy." And I'd be like, "Yeah." And I also suffered from severe social anxiety and things of that nature. So it would force me to engage with strangers, and it would put me out of my comfort zone all the time, which was really important as I worked on immersion therapy to kind of get over my stage fright, my social anxiety, and all of those things.
I've seen one in one of your videos on LinkedIn that your motto is "Embrace the uncomfortable." So how has this philosophy guided your approach, especially when tackling complex cybersecurity challenges?
Yeah, the biggest thing is I don't believe anything's impossible given enough time. We can figure stuff out. There's been many things that have been brought to me that have been, this is impossible. We can't do this. The vendor says we can't do it. And then I go back to my team and a bunch of us get into a room together and I say, how can we solve this? What can we do different? Embracing the uncomfortable to me is so important because I was just crippled by my fear of presenting, crippled by talking to random strangers. It was very difficult for me because of my autism. And I worked really, really hard to kind of get over those things. And once I got to that point where I just said, there's nothing I can't do, and I really started believing it, I lost my imposter syndrome. I lost my self-confidence issues, and I just said, look, I can do this. And like now, I'm in a situation where I've been a year on LinkedIn and people want me for interviews. It's been an absolute wild ride. And I've just been open and honest with who I am and kind of what my thoughts are. I've never once thought or cared what anyone thought about my videos. It's not like I'm trying to target an audience. It's technology and cyber, but sometimes I'll decide to post a video on mental health or autism or ADHD. Like, I just want people to know that you're not alone and it's okay. But embracing the uncomfortable to me is all about pushing yourself into that uncomfortable zone, because that's where I believe you learn the most. Plain and simple. You're always going to learn the most when you're uncomfortable. I had applied for a job, and I went through the interview, and they're like, we'd love to hire you, but you have no experience in this role. And I said, that is the place you want me. I said, if I already knew the job, I wouldn't want the job. I always apply for jobs that I have no experience or no skill or know anything that I shouldn't be there. And I believe that's where I thrive the most, because I fight every single day to prove that I should be there. And I think that's how I spent my entire career. Is mentally I was the underdog, so I was always fighting. I have a high school education. At the time of starting security at Disney, I had no certificates and no real security skills except being a hacker when I was younger. And I was just good at curiosity, good at chasing stuff and kind of never letting it go. My ADHD and my hyper focus that comes with my ADHD allows me to focus on a new issue or a new task or a new thing and never quit. But I mean, for those first several months, I just asked lots of questions. You asked kind of earlier some advice for new people. One of the most important things is raise your hand. If you don't understand something, stop the person talking and say, hey, can you explain this differently? Because just because they think you're learning doesn't mean you are. And as a presenter, you should be hitting all of your audience, not just a pocket of your audience, because you're talking over the rest of their heads. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And if anybody doesn't answer you or gives you, problems because you're asking for help, they're not the right people to be working with anyways. And it's time to find some other place to work, because if you're not in a place that's going to foster growth and try to help people, there's no reason. Because when you join cybersecurity, no matter what you think you know nothing. It's one of those things, like every day it changes and evolves. So how can you be always aware?
Absolutely. If you don't mind me asking, how did you overcome those feelings of imposter syndrome, social anxiety, and any advice that you can give to those that are experiencing those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, I worked with a lot of mentors. So just like I mentor a lot of people. The reason I do that is because I promised my mentors I would pay it forward. I told them early on, hey, all this time you're putting into me, I will give this back to people, and I will not stop giving it back to people, because if I can help one person, that person then helps other people. I had one of my mentees last night message me, and I was super excited. They're like, I got the job. All your advice was awesome. Like, it's because of you. And I'm like, no. You did this. I just helped you along your journey. And they're like, can I do anything for you? Can I buy you something? And I said, all you can do is just pay it forward. Try to help that next person who's struggling. For me, it was really just accepting the fact that I was different and weird, and being okay with it. I would say I didn't lose my imposter syndrome till I was probably 40. So it's only been 3 or 4 years. And It was when I got the security engineering manager job at Disney. I didn't even know what security engineering was when I applied. I had deep dived, I had done a ton of research, I had hyper-focused like a crazy person for several weeks before applying, and I knew I had an opportunity to interview, and I know I interview very well because I've worked very hard on those skills. So I get through the interview process and I get the job, and I'm panicking my first day. And, I'm like almost in tears. My wife's like, is everything all right? I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. I just don't know if I can do this job. Like, I have a lot of really smart people working for me now. And she goes, how many times have you done this in your career? And I said, taken a job I didn't know what I was doing? She said, yeah. I said, every time? She goes, then why is now going to be different? You've succeeded at every role that you've done. You've learned what you needed to learn to be successful. And you've continued to innovate and bring new things to each of those roles because you're not in a box. You weren't taught anything. You were learning on the fly and adapting to your environment. And I was like, you're right. Why am I freaking out? So I think a good support structure is really important. People who understand and like accept you for who you are is really important. And I've been incredibly lucky that I have a lot of, neurodivergent friends who understand. My wife understands, my family understands, sometimes I just need to completely decompress. The way my mind operates is different than other people. But if people don't know that and you don't tell people that, how are they supposed to understand when you're having a panic attack or you're freaking out over something that seems absolutely trivial to them? A great example is yesterday my dog ran into the road. My daughter saw my dog run on the road. Everything was fine. And she freaked out because, oh my God, the dog could get hit. The way an autistic mind works is that I went through every possible bad scenario. I then lived through those scenarios. I then got to experience the devastation of my kids and feel all of that in a matter of milliseconds. And so I was really overwhelmed, and I said, I need a moment. And my kids have learned, like, sometimes dad needs a moment, just leave him be. But I think being open, being comfortable, and being open and honest with how you feel, and also working, with your leaders or with your peers to kind of understand what works and what doesn't. That's been really beneficial in my career, saying like, hey, if you tell me this, I'm not going to remember, so please write it down. My mind's going 100 different ways trying to solve your problem you just told me about, and I can't really turn that voice off right now, so I need you to actually just kind of write it down. But I think that's really what it was for me, and part of embracing the uncomfortable was a big part of that. Is anytime I felt uncomfortable, I just said, let's do it, and I just dove in. And I mean, when I first started presenting, I was so devastated after a presentation session that I would have to take 2 days off to simply recover mentally. And now I can present in front of a crowd of 1,000 and be like, oh yeah, no big deal, and be completely fine. But it took a decade of working on myself, almost 20 years of self-reflection, understanding body language, understanding micro expressions, learning vocal tones. I read all of that because I don't fully understand or grok what people are doing. So it's really important to put work and effort into learning that stuff.
That is such an inspiring journey and some wonderful piece of advices. Time travel and bring back one piece of technology from the future to help with cybersecurity or anything that you can want to. So what would it be?
Oh, I mean, if I could go into the future and snag a device, it would be some sort of replicator that, very much like Star Trek, that created items or food for people. I feel like that would be very important. It's interesting though, because as a sci-fi buff, you go into that mindset. And as an autistic, I've now started solving this, right? I'm now thinking about all the problems that are involved with that. So I bring it back, no big deal. But then now people are fighting over it. Now people are trying to kill each other because they want this technology. Now other people are trying to get it. Then how do I protect it, right? My mind's now gone through 20 different scenarios on how to protect it. I still don't necessarily know how to protect it. Could I bring something back from the future that would be beneficial? Probably not. We're not mature enough. We would freak out over it and we would make it very difficult. Would I like to? Sure, but would I probably just keep it in my own house and help people occasionally? I think that's probably what I would come down to, just because anytime you see breakthroughs in technology like that, you see wars that break out, right? You see a lot of things, that happen. Even things like when we were first trying to fly, all the different things that happen and people trying to steal the technology and different things like that from the Wright brothers and all the different things that went along with just new technology in general. So yeah, I would bring it back, but I don't know if I would share it, but it would probably be some sort of replicator just because I think that's really cool. 3D printing is about as close as we get now. We can also 3D print food and other things like that, which is cool. But yeah, that's what I would probably do. A teleporter would be cool too.
Interesting. So thank you so much for your time, Robert, and thank you for such a wonderful advices, and your journey and your entire story was very inspiring, and I'm hopeful that our audiences will learn a lot from it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and if they have any questions, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn at BowTieSecurityGuy. If you need help with a mentor, if you need help with your resume, if you need somebody to look at your LinkedIn profile to see, all of that is free. I'm happy to help people. I will make time for you. As long as you put in the effort, I will continue to do so.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.